Hi everyone, it's Jo Wheatley and Zoe Hawkins, and we wanted to talk to you today about contracting within coaching sessions. Something that you're taught about when you train to be a coach. It's also something that we all have to come back to in a healthy way to review on a regular basis. So contracting really is an essential skill when it comes to working with another person, and it's about how we manage expectations. It's how we establish boundaries, and it's about how we ensure that people, each of us as coach and coachee, take responsibility for our relative roles and responsibilities in the coaching session. It is a core coaching competency with the coaching bodies. And so we wanted to give you an overview of the three main elements of contracting.
Yeah, so we are drawing from a book today called Reflective Practice and Supervision for Coaches from Julie Hay. It's actually a really good book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend you take a look. She writes really well and covers some really interesting pieces, not just about contracting, but all angles from coaching and supervision. So back to contracting, particularly three aspects that Julie Hay writes about are procedural, so procedural elements of contracting, professional elements of contracting, and also psychological elements of contracting. And a good coaching contract is going to touch on all of these three elements. So we'll start with procedural. So procedural contracting is really the stuff that probably comes quite easily to most people. So it would be about when are we going to meet? How long are we going to meet for? How many sessions are we going to have? What might happen if one of us needs to cancel? What are the terms and conditions? So there's that kind of stuff. And procedural contracting, whilst it sounds really simple, is actually really important because that's where you can damage your relationships. If you haven't actually covered things about cancellations, it can get awkward for the coach, awkward for the coachee. What you don't want is your coachee sat at home thinking, oh God, I don't feel up to this session today. I could really do with moving it. I feel obliged to go. You want that clarity and openness in the relationship to be able to deal with those sorts of issues. So procedural for me isn't just about ticking a box. It's actually laying a really strong foundation to your coaching relationship. Anything to build on that, Jo?
I think also money, like the financial side of it. So, who is it going to be payment up front? Is it going to be session by session? Also things from a virtual perspective now. So what happens if, if the network goes down and you're in the middle of a Zoom coaching session or whatever platform you're using? Do you both know that you're going to go to the phone straight away? Are you going to wait to reconnect? So just being clear around what are you doing, when are you doing it, is important.
Yeah. And then the second element is professional. So this is all about coaching itself. So many clients will come to coaching really not knowing what coaching is about. They may have read about it, heard about it from somebody else, have had some previous experiences of coaching. They may play sport and think that coaching is as it is in sport. So this is where you get to level the playing field and create clear expectation between both parties, from the coach and also the coachee. So this would really be about explaining clearly what coaching is from your perspective as a coach. How do you describe coaching to your clients? What is your coachee's experience of coaching? And leveling the playing field to get a common understanding of what coaching is. You'd also have a look at what can come into your coaching and what can stay out of your coaching. So starting to manage those boundaries around what are you comfortable as the coach working with? What is your client comfortable with you working with? And what do you do if your client brings something that you don't feel is coaching appropriate, or they bring something that they want coaching on? So it's where you start to talk about those boundaries as well.
Yeah, and also an obvious one here is confidentiality. Is the agreement and understanding that everything we discuss is confidential? What are the circumstances in which we may, as a coach, you may need to break confidence? And if that happens, how would you go about doing that? It might also be around if your client is currently seeing a counsellor and they want to have coaching, will you require them to get written agreement from the counsellor that it's appropriate for them to begin a coaching relationship whilst they're still having counselling? So it's very much around boundaries.
Yeah, and the third element is psychological. So you probably have heard the term psychological contracting if you're a coach or if you're training to be a coach. The psychological contracting is almost everything else that is invisible. So how do we make sure that if one of us is finding the relationship challenging, that we feel we have a space to be able to share that? What happens if one of you feels they're not progressing in the coaching relationship? How do we address that? What do we do if things get difficult between us? So those are some of the challenges that you might choose to address. Probably some benefits to it as well. So I've got some notes here. So how do we create openness in our relationship? What do you need from me as your coach to bring the best out in you? And this may be some place where you would also talk about things like self-sabotage. So if I notice that you are, self-sabotaging, or if I think that you may be engaging in behaviours that are unhelpful to you, how would you like me to share that feedback with you? How do you want me to, do you want me to share observations with you? How challenging do you want me to be? So you're really starting to test where your client's boundaries are around this psychological safety. And this is really about how you create the container to do your best work together.
Yeah, how much support do you want versus how much challenge? What will we do if one of us notices something going wrong in our relationship, like something changing or something that feels subversive? Is the agreement that we take that as data, as information, and that we're going to look at it in almost like a depersonalized way? What courage will we have in our relationship? I think is kind of like a good way to summarize that. And often the term psychological safety is used in reference to workplaces, the psychological contract having been broken. So it's all about alignment, really, between both parties to the contract. And that contract could be written or that contract could be verbal. We use a pre-coaching questionnaire or contract that lays out what the roles and responsibilities are of the coachee, what the roles and responsibilities are of the coach. We have separate terms and conditions as coaches. So somewhere that needs to be collected, as well as, because often the initial consultation that you might have with an individual is often quite informal, but you may have some of these discussions during that period. And how are you going to capture that? I know when I started coaching, I would go over time a lot with a client because I think we're in something really important here, and it felt dishonourable or cold to me to end the conversation at the agreed time. And a turning point from, obviously there's an issue around pacing, but sometimes a client will near the end of the session go, here's what we really needed to talk about today. So for me, it was a real learning curve to recognise that I wasn't honouring the client's time or my time. And I might also be colluding with an existing pattern of behaviour. So making sure that, acknowledging what was said, but still keeping to time, and then contracting for how we're going to work with that in the next session. So that was a definite shift for me. And as you develop your coaching skills, there'll be different elements of the coaching contract that are watch outs for you that you need to pay particular care and attention to, that perhaps you might overlook because you're uncomfortable with it.
And I would say around contracting is it's not a one-time event. So yes, you do a lot of contracting up front, and maybe we'll do some future videos on this, but there is also spot contracting and recontracting, based on how your coaching relationship changes shape over the sessions and things that come up. Because as you know, if you're coaching, like you might get to session 3 and something big will happen in the client's life where perhaps the goals that you'd been working on no longer seem relevant or as relevant, and so there are other opportunities and places within your relationship where good contracting needs to come up through as well. So hopefully you found today a good refresher on contracting. I mean, it's a big topic, but some good reminders in there. And as I said, the work from Julie Hay is some really nice, succinct work to look at when it comes to this topic. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again another time.
Thank you.